Science. Today we are going to be covering Tuesday's lesson for March 31st. We will be covering pages 404 through 407. So if you'll please open your books to page 405. If you notice, this is chart 19-1. In this chapter, we will be talking about connectives that express cause and effect, contrast, and condition. So on chart 19-1 on page 405, if we look at the top here, it says connectives can express cause, effect, contrast, and condition. They can be adverb clauses, words, transition, conjunctions, or prepositions. In chapter 17, you studied adverb clause words to express these ideas. In this chapter, you will also look at transitions, conjunctions, and prepositions. So a lot of this we have already seen, but now we'll be looking at words that connect these ideas. For example, in an adverb clause, you're going to have the adverb clause, and then you're going to have the main clause. We're going to use words that connect adverb clauses or that introduce adverb clauses for cause and effect, for contrast, and for condition. Okay? So if we look at example A, because Julian felt sick, he left work early. So if you notice here, because Julian felt sick, he left work early. Because introduces the adverb clause. The adverb clause is first, so we use a comma, then followed by the main clause. He left work early. And then on B, even though Julian is afraid of doctors, he decided to make an appointment. Even though also introduces the adverb clause, but this is showing contrast. Okay? The connectives in letters A and B are adverb clause words. Because introduces here in A, because introduces a cause and effect, and even though introduces a contrast. Okay? Now we look at example C. Julian had a rash and fever. Consequently, the doctor ran tests. So here, ladies and gentlemen, consequently is used as a transitional word. If you notice, in C, Julian had a rash and a fever, period, capital C. Consequently, comma, the doctor ran tests. Okay? So when we are using consequently as a transition, we're going to have a period before it, capitalize the letter C, and use a comma after it. Look at letter D, another transition word. The doctor ran tests. However, she found nothing serious. Okay? So here, when you look at this, the doctor ran tests, period, capital H, however, comma, she found nothing serious. The connectives in C and D are also transitions. Consequently, gives us a cause and effect. And however, gives us a contrast. In letter E, Julian wasn't seriously ill, but his doctor told him to rest anyway. And letter F, Julian wasn't well, so his doctor told him to rest. The connectives in E and F are used as conjunctions. Okay? But shows us contrast. It's a conjunction used to show contrast. So is a conjunction used to show cause and effect. So the connectives in E and F are conjunctions. If you notice here are your conjunctions in this list here. Okay? And so shows us cause and effect, but shows us, but and yet shows us contrast. Now we look at letter G. Due to his illness, comma, Julian missed several days of work. And he stayed at home from work because of his illness. Here, because of. Also, these are prepositions that are used to state cause and effect. The connectives in G and H are prepositions. Now you notice if you use due to at the beginning to introduce the adverb clause, we use a comma. But if you use because of after the main clause, no comma is necessary. Due to and because of have the same meaning. Okay? So if we look at the bottom, the list, these are adverb clause words right here. Okay? That means that these words introduce adverb clauses. Because, since, now that, so, or so that. Transitions that introduce cause and effect. Therefore, consequently. And conjunctions that introduce cause and effect. Are so. Prepositions, like in examples G and H, that introduce cause and effect, because of and due to. Since we have of and to, this would make this a preposition. Okay? Now, adverb clause words that introduce contrast. Even though, although, and though. Remember that even though, although, and though give us the unexpected response or unexpected result. Okay? For example, even though I wore a sweater this morning, I was cold. So, or although I wore a sweater this morning, I was cold. Or though I wore a sweater this morning, I was cold. That's unexpected because you're wearing a sweater, you assume that you're going to be warm. But that gives you the unexpected result. Also, while introduces, these are adverb clause words that introduce contrast. Now, transition words that introduce contrast, however, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the other hand. If you start the second sentence with however, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the other hand, even, therefore, and consequently, you're going to put a period before it, capitalize the first letter of the transition, and then separate it from the rest of the sentence with a comma. Just like in examples C and D. Conjunctions that show us contrast, but anyway, yet still. And prepositions that show us contrast, despite, in spite of. Okay? Now, if we look at conditions, adverb clause words that introduce adverb clauses with conditions, if, unless, only if, even if, whether or not, in case. Transition words that introduce conditions, otherwise. Conjunctions that introduce conditions, or else. there are no preposition words that introduce conditions. So we're going to be referring to this chart right here, especially this list right here, okay? For adverb clause words, transitions, conjunctions, and prepositions that show us cause and effect, contrast, and condition. Okay? So look at exercise number 2. On exercise number 2, it says, read the passage and underline the connecting words from chart 19.1. So we're going to use these words here, right here in this, okay? So we're going to underline. A distracted driver. Distracted driver. When you're multitasking and you're driving, you become distracted, especially if you're texting or making a phone call or applying makeup, you become distracted. So we read this. Even though Richard was driving the speed limit, he had an accident. The weather was clear. Nevertheless, he glanced briefly at a text message. He took his eyes off the road just long enough to lose control and drive over the edge of the road. Fortunately, his car landed upright. Although he wasn't seriously hurt, he was quite shaken up. This is Richard's second accident this year, so he knows his insurance rates will go up. Now that he's had 2 accidents, he's upset with himself. However, he knows his wife will be even more upset. He's not looking forward to telling her. So if we try to find in this reading, in these 2 paragraphs, words that show connectives from the list on chart 19.1, we'll go sentence by sentence. We look at the first sentence, or the first line. Even though Richard was driving the speed limit, he had an accident. The weather was clear, semicolon. So here, my first connective would be even though. Okay? And even though shows us contrast. The second line. Nevertheless, he glanced briefly at a text message. He took his eyes off the road just long enough to. Now, keep in mind that this is a semicolon, which is just as good as a period, but if we use a semicolon, we don't capitalize the next word, the next transition. So here, the second word that the second connector that we're going to see is nevertheless. Okay? Now, go ahead and do the rest of this exercise 2, and then we'll check to see if you found the other connectives. Okay, so we look at the third line. Lose control and drive over the edge of the road. Fortunately, his car landed upright. Although he wasn't seriously hurt, he was quite shaken up. So here, the connective word is going to be although. Now we go to the next paragraph. Line 1. This is Richard's second accident this year. So he knows his insurance rates will go up. Now that, so here, the connective is conjunction so. Another one is that. And it shows cause and effect. It's an adverb clause word. Okay, it introduces an adverb clause and it shows cause and effect. And then, so now that he's had 2 accidents, he's upset with himself. However, he knows his wife will be even more upset. Here, the transition word, however, is the connective. And you notice how there's a period here and there's a comma here, capital H. He's not looking forward to telling her. Here we have no connectives. So in this reading, the connectives were even though, nevertheless, although, so, now that, however. If you'll please turn to the next page. In exercise 3, it says, which sentences express the same meaning as the situation and result? Here's the situation, ladies and gentlemen. Monday was a holiday. Okay? The result, all schools were closed. So which sentences have the same meaning? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Go ahead and circle the number of the sentences that have the same meaning as the situation and the result. Okay. Yes or no? All schools were closed on Monday because it was a holiday. Is that a yes or a no? That's a yes. That's correct. It gives you the same meaning as the situation and the result. Look at number 2. Because of the holiday, all schools were closed on Monday. Yes or no? That is a yes. Number 3. Due to the holiday, all schools were closed on Monday. Yes or no? Yes. Number 4. Due to the fact that it was a holiday, all schools were closed on Monday. That is also a yes. Number 5. Because all schools were closed on Monday, it was a holiday. So here, this is no. The schools were not closed and therefore it was declared a holiday. No, Monday was a holiday. So the schools were closed. Okay. So number 1, 2, 3, and 4 have the same meaning as the situation and the result. Situation being that Monday was a holiday, all schools were closed. That's the result. Okay. So if we look at chart 19.2, using because of and due to. So we're going to differentiate when do we use because, when do we use because of and due to. In this, if you look at example A, because the weather was cold, we stayed home. So here, because introduces an adverb clause and it is followed by a subject and a verb. Because the weather, there's your subject. Was, there's your verb. Okay, so you have to look at that formula. Because is followed by a subject and a verb. So you have because and then 2, 3. Subject and verb. Okay? But if you look at B, because of the cold weather, we stayed home, and due to the cold weather, we stayed home. Because of and due to are phrasal prepositions, and they are followed by a noun object as in B and C. So here, because of the cold weather, there's your noun object. Due to the cold weather. You notice because of and due to are not followed by a subject and a verb like because. Okay? Because here because of and due to, they're prepositional phrases. Okay? Letter D. Due to the fact that the weather was cold, we stayed home. Sometimes, usually in more formal writing, due to is followed by a noun clause introduced by the fact that. So this is strictly formal writing. Now, if you're writing in your essay, for reading and writing, okay, if you're writing that, this would be more of a formal sequence, which I encourage, okay? Your writing instructor will be impressed. Look at example letter E. We stayed home because of, there's your phrasal preposition, and then your noun object, the cold weather. We stayed home due to, prepositional phrasal, noun object, the cold weather. And we stayed home due to, and then your formal sequence, the fact that the weather was cold. They all have the same meaning. The difference between B, C, and E is that the main clause comes first in E, followed by the adverb clause. In B and C, because of and due to, introduce the adverb clause, so we use a comma also, followed by the main clause. Now if we look at exercise 4, identify the cause and effect in each pair of sentences. Write C for cause and E for effect. Then combine the sentences with because. Okay? So it is also imperative that we identify the correct cause, followed by the effect. Okay? So look at number 1. John quit smoking. John has breathing problems. So here the cause is John has breathing problems. So what's the effect? Because he has breathing problems, he quit smoking. So John quit smoking, that's the effect. So now you combine the two sentences using because, and you say, because John has breathing problems, comma, he quit smoking. Or you can also say, John quit smoking because he has breathing problems. Same thing. You can use your adverb clause at the beginning, followed by a comma, then your main clause, or you can put your main clause here, followed by the adverb clause, no commas necessary. But you would use the proper noun instead of he at the beginning if you're using the main clause first. Look at number 2. Martina feels homesick. Martina moved to a new town. So ask yourself, what is the cause and what is the effect? So here, Martina moved to a new town. That's the cause. What's the effect? In other words, what's the result of that? Her moving to a new town. She feels homesick. Okay? So your sentence would be, because Martina moved to a new town, comma, she feels homesick. Or you can also say, Martina feels homesick because she moved to a new town. Okay, go ahead and look at number 3, number 4, and number 5. Identify the cause and the effect, and then combine both sentences using because. I'll give you a couple of minutes for that, please. All right, let's look at number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Vivian worked very hard. Vivian won a scholarship. Ask yourself, what is the cause and what's the effect? So here, this is your cause. Vivian worked very hard. The effect, Vivian won a scholarship. Your new sentence with because Vivian worked very hard, comma, she won a scholarship. Or you can also say, Vivian won a scholarship because she worked very hard. Same thing. Number 4. Victor has lost weight. Victor reduced his sugar intake. Okay? The cause. Victor reduced his sugar intake. The effect, Victor has lost weight. So your sentence with because, Victor has lost weight because he reduced his sugar intake. Or because Victor reduced his sugar intake, comma, he has lost weight. Number 5. Sanae increased her department's profits. Sanae was promoted to manager. The cause? Sanae increased her department's profits. The effect? She was promoted to manager. So, your two sentences. Because Sanae increased her department's profits, comma, she was promoted to manager. Or, Sanae was promoted to manager because she increased her department's profits. Okay. Now in exercise 5, ladies and gentlemen, it says, choose all the correct sentences. So number 1, we have choices A, B, C, D. And number 2, we have choices A, B, C, D. Circle the ones that you think are correct. Okay, let's look at number 1. A, my cell phone doesn't work because the battery is dead. Does that give you a cause and an effect? Yes. So A is correct. Look at B. Because my cell phone doesn't work, the battery is dead. That does not give you cause and effect. That's not correct. Letter C. Because the battery is dead, my cell phone doesn't work. That gives you cause and effect. Letter D. The battery is dead because my cell phone doesn't work? No. So only A and C are correct. Look at number 2. Because 2A. Because Pat doesn't want to return to the Yukon to live, the winters are too severe. That's not correct. B. Pat doesn't want to return to the Yukon to live because the winters are too severe. Yes, that is correct, because it gives you the correct cause and effect. Letter C. Because the winters are too severe, Pat doesn't want to return to the Yukon to live. That is also correct. Letter D. The winters are too severe because Pat doesn't want to return to the Yukon to live. That is not correct. So the only ones that are correct are B and C. Now we look at exercise 6. Complete the sentences with because, if it's followed by a subject and a verb, or because of, due to, if it's followed by a noun object. Okay? So, problems. Let's do the first one together. We postponed our trip, blank, the bad driving conditions. So we look at the bad driving conditions. Is that a subject and a verb, or is that a noun object? It's a noun object, so we can say we postponed our trip because of the bad driving conditions or due to the bad driving conditions. Go ahead and do number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then we'll check in a minute. So number 2, Sue's eyes were red, blank, she had been swimming in a chlorinated pool. So we look at this. This is a subject, and this is a past perfect progressive verb. So here, because she had been swimming in a chlorinated pool. Number 3, we can't visit the museum tomorrow, blank, it isn't open. Again, it is a subject, isn't is a verb be in the negative, so it's subject and verb, because it isn't open. Number 4, blank, heavy fog at the airport, our plane was delayed for several hours. And we look at heavy fog. That's a noun object. So we say, because of heavy fog at the airport, or due to heavy fog at the airport. Number 5. Blank, the elevator was broken. We had to walk up 6 flights of stairs. So here's my subject, the elevator. And then we have a passive verb, the verb be in the past participle. So you're going to say, because the elevator was broken, we had to walk up 6 flights of stairs. Number 6. Jim had to stop jogging, blank his sprained ankle. So if we look at his sprained ankle, is that a subject and a verb? No, it's a noun clause. I mean a noun phrase. So Jim had to stop jogging because of his sprained ankle or due to his sprained ankle. Let's look at number 7. Exercise 7. Complete the sentences with the ideas in parentheses. So here, news reports. These are reports you hear on television, radio, or even you read on your cell phone. So what you're doing is you're summarizing the information in the parentheses. Number 1, the traffic was heavy. Since we're using due to, we know that we're going to follow it with a noun object. Due to heavy traffic, alternate routes are advised into the city. Okay? Let's do number 2 together. Students have the flu. Many schools in the district have high absentee rates because of, so here, because of, so here's we have because of, and now we're going to follow it with a noun object. So we have to form a noun object with the information in parentheses. So many schools in the district have high absentee rates because of the flu. So that's going to go right here. Go ahead and do number 3, 4, and 5. All right, let's look at number 3. There are loud noises at the beach. Okay? Police are investigating reports of illegal fireworks because of, here's your prepositional phrase, because of, so we know we're going to use a noun object, because of, and the response is going to be loud noises at the beach. Loud noises at the beach, right here. Number 4. Circumstances are beyond their control. Due to blank, all City Hall offices are closed today. Notice that here we're using the prepositional phrase to introduce the sentence. Okay? So we use a comma. So due to. Due to circumstances beyond their control. No R. Due to circumstances beyond their control, all City Hall offices are closed today. Finally, for today, number 5. The donors are generous. Due to, and again, we're going to follow it with a noun object. Blank, the food banks have enough food for the holidays. So, you're going to say, due to generous donors. Due to generous donors, comma, the food banks have enough food for the holidays. Okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's lesson. Tomorrow's lesson will be pages 408 through 411. Okay? Have a good day.